Hi, welcome. Good evening. Today is Thursday, January 14th, and this is the ECIA session number 2. We had an early morning session last week, so we're going to present on the same thing. You have me, I'm Shani, I work in the city manager's office, and then also Patrick Seals is here from our city attorney's office. The third party to our team is LaShonda White. She's acting deputy city manager, and she may join us, we're not sure right now, but you have Patrick and I that will be presenting. We'll go ahead and get started. And Patrick, go ahead and start the slide deck, please. Okay, so this is the ECIA fiscal year 2021-22 grant cycle. And this evening we'll be giving you an introduction to the ECIA program and also an overview. We will go over the guidelines. Also, we will review the actual application and answer any questions. We will talk about next steps, the things that you need to do moving forward in order to apply. And we will have a question and answer session. We also will be taking questions in the chat, so feel free to type your questions in the chat or use the Q&A feature, which allows you to submit a question, and we will answer it if we can during the presentation.
So, again, my name is Patrick and I support the City Attorney's Office and also support the Department of Children and Youth and also the Richmond Department, the Environmental Community Investment Agreement, the ECIA. So just wanna let you all know that we are entering into our 6th grant cycle. The ECIA started in fiscal year 16-17. And to date, we've given out almost $3 million, approximately over $2.7 million to more than 130 organizations over these past 6 grant cycles. The investment overall of the ECIA is approximately $90 million across a myriad of areas. And here we see a couple of bullets that highlight some of those, including community programs that support the reduction of greenhouse gas, programs that support renewable energy in the form of solar farms, and the allocation specifically of that $90 million that's set aside for the competitive grant agreement is $6 million. The focus of the grant, according to the ECIA agreement and within our guidelines, states that the fund is meant to support community programs and nonprofits focused on communities, youth, and youth sports. And that is a broad swath of organizations and programming and projects. And it's intentional that we're being overly broad because we want to support everyone, all of the nonprofits and community-based organizations that are supporting Richmond folks, Richmond kids, Richmond families. And what we're trying to do is, through the ECIA, is to support access to organizations that might have varied capacity and be at different points in their journey as a nonprofit. And we're looking for sustainability. And this is a very, very important point. The funding that organizations are seeking in relationship to the grant that we offer, our desire is that we be a supplemental resource or source of revenue for organizations, but that organizations are not reliant upon ECIA grant funding. And the reason is because if organizations are reliant upon ECIA grant funding, hypothetically, you have a program whose project budget is $20,000 and you get your full $20,000 from ECIA for that program, that might be great for you. But in the subsequent year, if you don't receive funding, and all that wonderful work, all that wonderful outreach and engagement that you've completed, that program goes away for those communities, those kids, and those families. That program dies. And so we don't want that to happen. So we're encouraging organizations to be as diversified, not only in their portfolio, but in their seeking out revenues and resources. And I'm going to turn it back over to Shanae.
Thank you, Patrick. So now I'm going to go into our guideline review. Our guidelines are posted on our website. We'll provide those links to you at the end of the presentation. So eligibility requirements, you'll find the eligibility requirements on page 4. To be eligible for an ECIA grant, your grant funded program must serve Richmond and or North Richmond residents. And we have an 80% threshold, meaning the grant funded program must serve 80% or more of Richmond and or North Richmond residents. You must have a nonprofit 501c3 tax status. We do require that you provide paperwork stating so. You will also need to have either 990 or 990 ends or financial or audited financials. I mean, they must be current. Also, you're able to use a fiscal sponsor. If you do not have a 501c3 status, it does not mean that you're ineligible. You just will need to find a fiscal sponsor that's willing to act as a pass-through for you. You are not able to have received the ECIA grant award of more than $10,000 in a previous grant cycle. So an example of that is we're currently in 2021. And if you received an award of more than $10,000 in this current grant cycle, you are not eligible for the 21-22. You must sit out one cycle. Lastly, organizations, well, actually that bullet point we're gonna take off of there. So we'll move on to the next slide. Grant awards. Grant awards are on page 5. The ECIA grant awards a minimum of $5,000 up to a maximum of $50,000. We are on a fiscal year grant cycle, so that runs from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. We work diligently to try to get everything in place so that funds are available to you at the start of the grant cycle. Organizations may only submit one application per grant cycle. So if you have, a few different programs, choose your strongest program that you want to apply for and go for that.
I do want to add one point to that, which is, although you may submit one application, an organization is eligible to serve as a fiscal sponsor for other organizations. So the organization who is the main applicant, right? If you're serving as fiscal sponsor for multiple organizations because you have that capacity to support burgeoning organizations, you are eligible to serve as fiscal sponsor on multiple applications, but you may only be the lead agency for one application, just for clarity's sake.
Thank you for that, Patrick. Okay, and so grant categories. The ECIA grant has multiple grant categories. The first category, the first and second category is our competitive grant awards. Those are for organization. The first one is for organizations who have gross receipts less than $50,000 annually. So those are the ones that usually file the 990 ends. And then we have our second category, which are the organizations with gross receipts more than $50,000 annually. And usually they file 990s. The award range again is from $5,000 to $50,000. And the total amount that's available to organizations this year is $225,000. That is different from previous years. Generally, there's $500,000 available, but due to staff being split between different priorities right now, and there being more than one grant that's going to be released to Richmond residents, we had to lower that amount. You have category 3, which are the city council approved awards. And those are for organizations that apply through either category 1 or 2, but were not recommended for funding. And so those organizations are presented to council. We have a meeting with the city ad hoc or council ad hoc committee, and we show them the folks who were not recommended, and then the council will award up to $25,000 total for the organizations that they choose, and it's at the council's discretion. There's category 4, which is the Community Services Mini Grant Awards, and those are managed by the Community Services Department, and their grant award range is up to $5,000, and they have a total of $50,000. So altogether, there's $300,000 to be awarded through the ECIA grants. So on the first page, you'll notice that there was a note, it said see special note. So this is a change. A maximum of $100,000 in total grant awards is available to organizations with annual budgets over $750,000. So that's going to be based on the most recent 990s or audited financials. In the past, that amount was $200,000, but again, because we reduced the amount of the overall award, we also had to reduce this requirement. So it's a maximum of $100,000 available to organizations over with budgets over $750,000. Eligible uses of the grant. On page 6 of the guidelines, you'll find the eligible uses. The grant will fund programs and projects, as Patrick mentioned in the beginning, that support youth programs through age 21, youth sports programs, and community focused programs. So basically, if you have an organization and you're out there serving the community, you are eligible to apply for the ECIA grant. Examples of different types of projects or programs that we fund include health and wellness, students and parents, service learning, gardening and urban greening, homelessness services. Basically, if you are helping the community and you have an organization, you are welcome to apply. Ineligible uses are also found on page 6. Ineligible uses, I won't read them all, but they include things such as repayment of existing debt. There can't be anything that you're using for political gain. It can't purchase furniture and cell phones. Those are just some of the ones that stick out, but please feel free to look at page 6 of our guidelines to look at the ineligible uses and make sure that what you are applying for falls under one of the categories that is allowed. Fiscal sponsorship. So on page 7, you will find information about our fiscal sponsorship option. And so what the fiscal sponsorship does is it allows organizations without a 501c3 tax status to apply for the ECIA grant. If you are a startup, maybe you haven't had a chance to get your 501c3, but you're out there, you're working in the community, you still want to apply for this grant, we want you to apply. So please find a fiscal sponsor. It is your responsibility as an organization to find a fiscal sponsor. We do not tell you who to go through. But we do encourage you to find a fiscal sponsor if you don't have the 501c3 tax status. The fiscal sponsor will actually serve as the applicant. And so the agreement between the agreement that we issue will be between the city and the fiscal sponsor. They're the ones that will enter into the fiscal sponsor agreement. You will be required, if you use a fiscal sponsor, to have an agreement between your organization and your fiscal sponsor that states what that relationship is, and you would be required to submit that to us. Collaborating organizations, we strongly encourage collaborations across all organizations. It's just so many benefits to collaborating. And benefits include information sharing, joint programming. You can leverage your funding. It's more efficient. It reduces the redundancy. So if we have someone who's already doing the same thing that you're doing, maybe together you guys can come up with an even bigger program or project and go out there and make more of an impact. So we just strongly encourage collaboration. And if you have any questions about organizations that we know of that might be doing the same thing that you're doing, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're always happy to share that information. Collaboration with governmental entities and agencies are allowed, and you would be required to submit to us a written agreement that shows that the collaborative is authorized. And also we will want to have the name of the agency, the contact person, and then the description of what that collaboration looks like. An example would be if you were going to collaborate with the school district, say you're going to have a program and your program is going to operate at a school site, then you would need to submit to us a letter from the school district on their letterhead with the contact person, and then describe what your role is in what your role is in the collaboration. And it would have to give consent from the school district that they know that you're going to be using their grounds. Okay, required documents. Required documents are found on page 8 of our guidelines. And so obviously one of the required documents is your completed application. So we need the application to be completed in its entirety. We've tried to revise the application over the years to make sure that it's as simple as we can make it. So I hope that you guys find it an easy application to complete. You also need to submit your budget. So there's 2 different budgets we're looking for. We're looking for your organizational budget, and we're also looking for your program budget. So your organizational budget is the amount of money that your organization brings in, and your program budget is the amount of money that it takes to run the program for which you are applying for the funds. You also need to submit to us your proof of 501c3 status. That's shown in the form of a letter from the IRS just stating that you're tax exempt. Financial statements, your 990s, 990Ns, or audited financials are required, and they must be current, or the most current that you have. We need a list of your board of directors and affiliations, a letter authorizing collaboration if you are going to enter into a collaboration with another organization. And then we also need a signed agreement from your fiscal, or a signed agreement between you and your fiscal sponsor. And that's if you go the route of having a fiscal sponsor. On the required documents, we're going to go back to that. I see a question in the chat about whether or not, if you have a fiscal sponsor, is it the fiscal sponsor information or is it yours? So the completed application, there's a spot for you to put your name and then the fiscal sponsor name. The budget, we want to see your organizational budget and your program budget. It's still your application, it's still your program. You're just using a fiscal sponsor to go through them. The proof of 501c3 status obviously would be the fiscal sponsor that would need to give us that. The financial statements, we actually want to see those from the fiscal sponsor, and the list of board of directors and affiliations will be fiscal sponsor, and then letter authorizing collaboration, you and the fiscal sponsor and sign agreement. I hope that answered that question for you. And another question, sorry guys, we're just trying to put these in at the area where they belong if we can. So there's a question asking that if the fiscal sponsor received an ECIA grant last year, but their program or their organization or their project did not, are you still eligible this year? Yes, you are. The fiscal sponsor is just the pass-through. So that eligibility requirement, it is talking about the organization that received the funds. So or the project that received the funds. So if you are organization A, and then your fiscal sponsor is organization B, and maybe the fiscal sponsor received something from us before, it wouldn't matter because you're applying for this ECIA grant. And so we're looking at the organization that's doing the work. The fiscal sponsor is just a pass-through, and it would not affect your eligibility. Okay. Okay. So we have new online submission details. So the submission of the application used to be in person, but because of COVID and because we want to limit our contact and your contact and keep everybody safe, we are very excited to announce that we now have an online submission process. The details of that is on page 9 of the guidelines. So this is just a screenshot here of what our ECIA community grant page looks like. And so on that page, there's a really big, and I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but there's a really big red submit button at the bottom of the page or midway through the page. And also it talks about it says new online process. And so once you have everything together, all of your required documents, your completed application, then you want to come back here and you want to go to our website and hit submit. And once you hit submit, it's going to take you to an application portal where you can fill out some other information and upload the required documents. At the very end of this presentation, or towards the end of the presentation, Patrick will do a quick tutorial, maybe like 2 minutes, and just show you how that looks and what is required in the submission process. So again, there's submitting the completed grant application, and a completed grant application includes your budgets. That's the organizational budget and the program budget, and resumes and or descriptions of work experience. And then also all of the required documents that are listed separately. The responses to the applications shall be limited to 8 pages. So we ask you to please adhere to the page limit. We cannot guarantee that if you go over the page limit that all of your information will make it to the review committee. So please adhere to the 8 pages. The page limit is not inclusive of budgets and resumes or descriptions of work experience. So basically the budgets, resumes, descriptions of work experience, all those things that are not requested as a required document, or I'm sorry, that are requested as a required document, they are not going to count towards your page limit. Okay, payment provisions. That's on page 9 of our guidelines. And our grant payments are awarded on a reimbursement basis, and they're also on a biannual basis. So we only want 2 billings a year. We used to do it quarterly. It was a lot of work for the organization. It was a lot of work for staff to look at it. So we do reimbursement on a biannual basis. We do recognize that some organizations are smaller. Maybe they don't have the funds to put up in the beginning of the program. And especially with COVID happening, it's put a lot of people in a different position. So advance payments is something that we've offered for the past few years. The first advance is the initial advance, and it's 50% of the total grant award. And then you're eligible for an additional 35% of the total grant award by request. And that's only after the initial advance has been used and you tell us how you use that. And the remaining 15% of the grant is going to be held until the very end, and we release that payment with a final report. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Patrick. He's gonna go through the review criteria.
Thank you, Shani. So after you've submitted your grant application and you've uploaded all the documents and we as staff do some initial review, it'll be provided to a review committee. And this describes how the review committee will be evaluating and scoring your application in all of its parts. You can see here that there are three major sections. The initial section, section 1 on the grant application, is not scored. It is merely just us gathering information about your organization, some contact information, fiscal sponsor organization information, if you are using a fiscal sponsor, some descriptors of the project, proposed project, and some initial budget numbers. Once you move on to section 2, you'll have the program description and concept. That'll be worth 40 points. Then there'll be section 3, which is impacts and goals, and that'll be an additional 40 points. There is the financial viability, section 4, which will look at your budget and how well that aligns to the budget documents you submitted, how well that aligns to your required financials, and what that all looks like in concert with what you're proposing. Finally, at the direction of council, we do allow for an additional set of 10 points for Richmond-based organizations. So you'll see here that there's 40, 40, 20, that's 100. And for those that are Richmond-based who have organization addresses in Richmond, not a PO box, but an organization address in Richmond, they do receive an additional 10 points. And just some little notes about proposal writing. As an aside, the webpage, the ECIA grant webpage, has a plethora of trainings and tutorials and workshop events that we've hosted over the years. We encourage you all to do this. We have hosted some grant writing workshops. And I would encourage you, those who feel maybe a little less confident or getting into this for the very first time, to review those. And but just some notes here of a framework for approaching the grant writing and proposal writing process. We think that planning is important, research is important, obviously the writing, and then the follow-up. And so when we talk about planning, really, when you and your team meet to discuss planning for to complete the ECI grant application, one of the major questions that needs to be addressed is, what do we need the money for, right? What are we looking to do with the funding that we're requesting from the city? And then do your research, right? So how will you or your organization and team approach the work, right? So that gets at who are you going to, what will the funds be used for, and what populations you'll be serving, how will you serve them, where are they located in the city, and et cetera. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get through the application specifically. And then the writing, right? How do we put it all together, right? How do we craft a story and an arc that makes it very clear, number one, that there is a need for this service, that we recognize that impacting that need is significant, and we express that. And then we set forth our recommendation, right, about how we are really well situated to address that need. And finally, what to do once the decision has been made. So once you get a grant, it's important that you stay in contact with staff. It's important that you let us know about ongoing projects or services that you're providing. It's important that you let us know, most importantly, if there are changes, right? A lot of times organizations submit a grant application, we award them, and then they submit a progress report or invoice at the midpoint, and they let us know that things have changed, people have left, that things they anticipated were going to happen weren't going to happen. And so they want to move a bunch of money to do something that does not look like what they may have initially applied for. So keeping us abreast of those changes makes any pivoting that needs to happen within your grant award process much easier. And here are just some prompts that we're including for your own benefit. So what is it that we, the city, want to know is what specific need are you addressing? And we'd like for you to make sure that it fits the size and scale of your solution. And what that means is if you're a brand new organization and you have yourself and maybe one other person working part-time and you've got 2 or 3 volunteers, and you tell us that you want to give a backpack to every school going child in Richmond, that may not fit the size and scale of your organization. And when we see that, we'll be looking at the capacity, right? It draws questions. And so make sure that your capacity as an organization fits the size and scale of your solution. What is your specific plan of action, right? And that word specific is important, right? It's not just we want to help people, but what we're going to do is we're going to use weekends over the holidays when children are out of school, and we're going to provide or work to support food insecurity in this neighborhood, and specifically targeting this demographic of people who have maybe parents who are new parents, young parents, seniors, single parents, right? Get as specific and as detailed as you can. You want to create an image and a picture of what you're actually trying to achieve. We want those outcomes to be measurable. So you've got to be thinking about evaluating your organization. So making sure that you have processes in place that will be able to inform us about how much you're doing, right? Who are you serving and how much you're serving them, how well you're doing it, and some numbers that capture who's better off. Finally, these last 2 bullets, how will you know if you're successful, right? So you identifying ultimately what a win looks like, right? It's important for organizations to do that. And finally, how will the program be sustainable long run? I'm telling you that in the evaluation room, in the scoring room, and Shania and I have been there, this matters, right? And so thinking about sustainability long term does impact your evaluation and how people look at the efficiency and the effectiveness of your proposed project. At this point, we're going to move forward to the application. Shani, I don't know if there are anything you want to add or if there are any questions you want to just voice out, or are we ready to move on?
So there is a question in the chat that I'm going to address, and it asks, can an organization apply as a grantee and fiscal sponsor? So I'm not sure that I understand the question, but if the fiscal sponsor was applying for a program, then they would be the applicant. They wouldn't be applying as a fiscal sponsor. So basically, we don't have a category for someone to apply as a fiscal sponsor or as a grantee. Whenever you apply for the program as an organization, you are the applicant and you are applying for it. Now, whether or not you're the organization who doesn't have 501c status and you're going to use a fiscal sponsor, they are just your pass through. But the application is for the organization who is who's applying for the funds for the program. So I hope that's clear. I'm not quite sure how that or what you were trying to find out from that question, but we will have a session at the end and we can go into more details of that.
So moving on to the grant application. We've taken some screen snips here for you all, and we can walk through it quite briefly. Again, like I referenced, section 1 is really it's unscored. It's not a scored section. And it's your opportunity to tell us some really hard details about your organization, where you're located, contact information, etc. And when you say this top section is for the organization, as Shani said, who is the lead applicant. This is the organization that will actually be doing the work. They will have the proverbial boots on the ground and be conducting the program or the project. In Conversely to the fiscal sponsor, who, as Shani referenced, is merely the pass-through. If you are using a fiscal sponsor, we will want to know that information. If you are not, then you can disregard this section. If you are using a fiscal sponsor, we'll want to know the name of that organization, where they're located, the additional, all those contact information. Here, the program and project budget section, we'll want to know what the program or project budget is, which is different than the box below, which is the organizational budget. And Shani kind of offered some definition there, but just for the sake of clarity, I'll review again just briefly here. The program or project budget is the amount of money that it takes to run your proposed project that you're seeking funding from us for, the entire project. So I always use the same example, which is Shani smiling, a backpack giveaway, right? So you want to do a backpack giveaway, that is the program or project, right? Your organization, your program or project budget might be $5,000, but your organizational budget, you're a little organization, you just got started, right? And your organizational budget might be $25,000, right? Because not only do you do backpack giveaways, maybe you support students or parents with classes or trainings. Maybe you provide them with some tech resources or hotspots, right? So you have a small budget, you're just getting started, you want to do something that really matters for school preparedness. Your project budget would be, the program or project is, hey, I want to do a backpack giveaway. That budget to do that whole project is $5,000. But we as an organization, we bring in, the revenue we bring in is $25,000, and our expenses total that as well. That's what a good budget will do. Here, the amount of grant funds requested. So your project budget might be $5,000 for the whole backpack giveaway, because you might be giving away a couple Chromebooks and you've got pens and papers and so forth. And maybe you've done some fundraising and you have another grant somewhere. The amount of grant funds requested, that box is how much money do you want from ECIA? So here, the program or project budget might be $5,000, but what you're requesting from us is $2,500, excuse me. You're requesting about 50%, right? Because you've done some legwork and you've been out working and doing some publicity. If you're using a fiscal sponsor, we'll want to know what their overall organizational budget is, right? What does it take for that organization to function viably for a full year will be the number there. And we'll have some more clear examples as we move forward. Shani, are we good? Okay. Here is, again, this section 1 is not scored. We'll want to know what the program project title is, right? So if we're using our backpack giveaway as an example, it could be carrying youth forward into the future, right? That will come up with something that gets somebody's attention. In that project or program summary, 50-word limit, please adhere. Following direction, I'm gonna just put this in here. This is a grant writing tip. Following direction is one of the best ways to get grant awards, right? When you follow directions, you make it easy for staff to review your applications, and it lets us know that you're reading details, you're detail-oriented, you know how to follow through, and you can actually make stuff happen. And so I want to tell you that stick to the prescribed limit here. We want a project or program summary of 50 words, right? That gives us just a snapshot of how you describe the project, right? So my project might be equipping young people in a particular area for school preparedness that supports long-term learning and growth, and supports parents who in a particular area who might have might be low income or et cetera, right? We could come up with something. The percentage of Richmond residents served by your organization. So what we want here is not for you to take the number of Richmond residents that you serve divided by the total number of Richmond residents. And that's what a lot of people do. What we want to know is, if you're giving away, in our backpack giveaway, if you're giving away 100 backpacks, what percentage of those 100 backpacks that you will give away are going to Richmond residents, right? And in my example, I'm going to make up that 100% of the backpacks that we're going to give away are going to Richmond residents because we are going to be only serving. But you might say that, hey, 80 of those backpacks are going to go to Richmond residents because we're also kind of close to El Cerrito or San Pablo. So we want to know, of the people that you're served, what percentage of Richmond residents are going to receive your service? You want to add?
Yeah, and I just want to add that is for the grant funded program.
Right.
That's for the grant funded program. So it's not the overall organization, how many Richmond residents, it's for the program or project for which you are seeking funds.
Will your program or project serve youth through age 21, right? And this is not an ancillary service. What we mean when we say, will your program or project serve youth through age 21? In the guidelines, we talk of, there's a threshold, and that threshold is 80%. So if you have 100 people that are accessing the backpack giveaway, right? We know for my backpack giveaway that we're working with kids who are going to school in West County Cross Unified School District. 100% of my kids, 100 people, 100% of the people who are accessing or served by my program are youth. If you have a program and 100 people access it, right, and one is a youth, you don't serve youth. It has to be an 80% threshold. 80 individuals out of 100, or 8 out of 10 of the people that you serve need to be youth for you to answer yes to that question. If 8 out of 10 of the people that access your program, or less than 8 out of 10 of the people that access your program are not youth, then you don't serve youth based off of the definition of our guidelines. Finally, we want you to give us some definition as far as a category. This box here is a drop down, and there's about 10 or 12 categories. We just want to know what categories, like Shani said, is it health or wellness? Is it fitness? Is it sports? Is it mental health, right? You'll see a list there, and just select the one that best describes. It may not be perfect, but that best describes the work that you do. So we move on to section 2, and here is where we begin to score. And if you recall, section 2, the points eligible for this section are 40. So this is a substantial part of the scoring for your application. And so here we have provide information about your organization, right? So this is just some background stuff. Number of years, description of the services you provide, and the population you serve. Again, details, details, details. I would recommend that you be as detailed as possible. Describe in detail the program or project your organization is proposing, and list the components or aspects of that program. Again, we want to know, again, our backpack giveaway, right? We want to support youth, and if we could get more detail, I want to support 3rd graders that go to these 2 elementary schools in this neighborhood, and parents who are either new parents, young parents, or single parents who identify as low income or very low income with backpack giveaways. That's the level of detail. And what are the components of that program, right? We're going to identify those people, right? And then we're going to let them know that we have these, and then we might do some equity as far as who's most in need, right? I'm making up things, but that is the detail that lets somebody know, wow, I can see this program come alive. Then we're going to want to know what the timeline, we'll want to know what the timeline is, right? For a backpack giveaway, we're going to do it 2 times a year, right? We're going to do a backpack giveaway in September, right? Or end of August, September, because that's when school starts. And we might do another one in January when kids come back from the holiday breaks, right? And so, but before that, we'll want to know, hey, in July, we're reaching out to Target, we're reaching out to CVS, we're reaching out to Apple or Best Buy, and we're seeking out donations, right? And you tell us in detail what the action is, and in that second column, the corresponding month, right? And so you can use multiple bullets across the months. And in the second term, we'll do the same thing. And so it kind of repeats. Shani, we good?
Yes.
Okay. We want to know, who are the people that you are utilizing to support your program, right? And here's an opportunity where you can describe their work experience. Remember, you have 8 pages, but those resumes don't count towards those 8 pages. So be strategic about how you use your space here. And if you plan to collaborate with other organizations, I can tell you that collaboration, as Shani said, is something that we look forward to, we encourage, and it lets us know, again, as that whole concept of sustainability, leveraging resources, leveraging funds, et cetera, talent and skill, is something that you might want to look into because it positions you well, and funding organizations who are entering into collaborations is just a good practice. We want you to identify, if you are collaborating, who those partners are. And again, that then triggers the letter that Shani referenced in just a little earlier, a letter that identifies the nature of that relationship. And again, for government entities, we'll need something on letterhead that identifies and lets us know that you have met with them and spoke with them and saw and actually got approval. We good, Shani? Section 3 is project impacts and goals. So here's again where you give us some detail, a little bit more refined. What is the target population, right? So in our backpack giveaway, our target population is 3rd grade kids who go to school in these areas and whose parents are either young parents or new parents, and identify as low or moderate or very low income, right? And so we've identified a population. I've identified the school or geographic area, right? And I've identified the need, right? And it's not just doing that, but it lets us know that you know who you're serving, right? And you've done your research, which we had on the other slide. So this is very good practice. We also want to know if your organization, again, that percentage piece, this is just a kind of another way of getting at that information of the total number of individuals served by the project that you're seeking ECI grant fund, right? How many do you propose you'll support, right? And again, what is the total number of residents served by the project? So we want how many overall and how many are Richmond residents that through your grant funded project. So here's a table. And again, we're using our backpack giveaway as example. This is an example. And when you get at the application, you'll note that you can remove this. Please, y'all, do me a favor. Remove this example, right? I think about maybe 70% of the applications we get still have this example sitting in it. Do me a favor, remove this example. You will make me so happy. So we want to know, again, getting at that measurable piece that we talked about. Here's a table that gets at that. So for our backpack giveaway, the component, right? If we were to put a tag or a title on what we're trying to do, is school preparedness, right? We're trying to prepare kids for school. So what is the outcome that we want, right? The outcome we want is we want to provide backpacks filled with school supplies to 100 3rd grade students. That is what we want to do. We want to prepare kids for schools, and the outcome we're looking to have is to get rid of 100 backpacks to 3rd grade students filled with school supplies. How will we know, right? What is the indicator that we'll use to kind of measure that? Is the number of backpacks provided. Our goal is 100 backpacks. And how we'll determine whether we meet that goal is we'll perform a simple tabulation of backpacks distributed against those remaining, or we could survey the 3rd grade class, right? And 99 kids said they got backpacks. We did pretty good. Finally, our grant application budget. We've gone ahead and filled in some of this information just to provide you with some samples of what it could look like. Yours may not look like this. Yours may be much more simple, or yours could be far more complicated. So we have 4 columns here. We have 2 sections, okay? The top section is the revenue section, and revenue is just a fancy phrase for the money you bring in, right? Your income. And then we have your expenditure section, which is the fancy phrase for the money you spend. The 4 columns that you see there are the categories, the ECIA request, the project budget, and revenue. But really that 4th column is really just descriptors about status and more information. So at the top, the revenue section, or the money you bring in, we want to know, hey, where do you get income for your organization, right? Is it personal donation? Is it in-kind donation? Is it grants? Is it cupcake sales or bake sales or whatever, right? It can be whatever you want. But we want to see that information there. Again, because we value sustainability, we want to know that ECIA is not the only pot of money that you're looking to for resources, right? And we do want to see the ECIA grant as a potential category of funding because you are seeking a grant funded from us. You can see that the only dollar amount in the ECI, that next column, it says ECIA request. The only dollar amount that you see there is the ECIA request. The only dollar amount that should go in this column, this next immediate column, is the amount of money you are requesting from the ECIA. The project budget, which we talked about, if we're doing a backpack giveaway, in this case is $50,000, go whoever's doing a $50,000 backpack giveaway project, right? This organization has received funding from foundations, they've got some money from banks, got donations, they've got in-kind, and the $7,000 is also there, right? That final column there, revenue status, we wanna know what the status, so if you've applied for grants or if you've got donations or you're looking to do some fundraising, we wanna know, have those things been approved? Are they in process? Are they pending, right? When we go down to the bottom, the expenditure section, which is specific to the ECIA request, right? You can see, and here's a tip, really it's a tip. The revenue total at the top and the expenditure totals at the bottom, those bolded, should be the same for each column. So you can see the revenue total is 7, at the bottom the expenditures total is 7. You can see in the project budget it's 45, and in the bottom it's 45. Those numbers need to match. If they don't match, you didn't do your budget right. So for the ECIA request, they're requesting $7,000, right? And they want $2,500 for food, they want supplies, and there's some overhead, and that's $7,000. Their project budget is 45, and then they lay out specifically how that 45 is split, excuse me. In the last column, you see budget narrative, right? They give us some information about what executive director is $10,000, and they say it's one executive director position. For the personnel, they've got 18, and they say, hey, we got 2 program managers and they're part-time. For the food, it's, hey, we're gonna do 6 workshops and it's gonna cost $600 per workshop. Here is a sample of a really well done budget, and this is the level of detail, at least the level of detail that we're looking to have. And so, Shani, I don't know if we've got any questions, or you might want to just chime in here a little bit.
So I wanted to chime in just to say that when the review committee is looking at this budget, it tells them a lot about the organization. So more detail is always good because they can get a picture of how this program is going to run. And although we do want to see that we're not the only organization that you use for funding, as Patrick had mentioned, just for sustainability reasons, it does not mean that you can apply if somehow you think that this is the only funding. We've funded plenty of folks where this was the only money that did that they used for their program, and we were the sole source. But I do know that the committee looks for programs that they know are going to be sustainable, because the goal is to, bring new programming to Richmond and have it continue on. And eventually, you use us where you can, and then you go off to bigger and better things. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick.
So, the review process. As Shani said, I think this is you, Shani. Is this your slide or is this me?
I'll go for it.
Okay.
Okay, so for the review process, that's found on page 11 of our guidelines. Applications must be received by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, February 5th, 2021, no exceptions. In fact, the portal will cut off after 11:59 p.m. So we always encourage folks to do it earlier rather than wait to the last minute, just to allow for any technical issues or anything like that. So again, February 5th at 11:59 p.m. The first part of the review process is for the city staff to review it for responsiveness, to make sure that the applications are completed in its entirety and that all required documents are there. Once we do that, all complete and eligible applications are forwarded to the review panel for scoring. The review panel has a couple of weeks to do that. And once they convene, they come up with recommendations, and their recommendations are forwarded to the city council for final approval. Awardees will be notified, and then generally we try to notify you before it goes to council for approval. And once it's approved, we enter into contracts between the organization and the city, or if you have a fiscal sponsor, between your fiscal sponsor and the city. Our timeline is on page 12 of our guidelines, and the timeline is tentative, so it can be changed at the city's discretion, but we're hoping that we can stick to this timeline. We've been pretty good this current fiscal year with sticking with it, and so we plan to carry that through on subsequent fiscal years. So the application release date, it was released on December 18th. We sent out some email blasts or a listserv, and then we're now doing the information session. So this is the second and final information session occurring in January. Applications are due February 5th, 2021 by 11:59 p.m. And then the application review and scoring is going to happen between the time that we receive the applications and early March. Capacity building workshops, where those are still to be determined. We're not sure which ones we're going to offer, so staff is working on that. The applications, we're hoping to have city council review and approval either late April, early May. The grant award notification is sent out around that same time. And then we work with the organizations to enter into grant agreements or into contracts. And the grant award period is July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. The start date is dependent upon the execution date of the grant services agreement, but we're trying to get those in place prior to July 1st so that we can get funds out to you guys. You may have noticed in the earlier slide that it says grant funds are awarded at the execution of the contract. So our goal is to get that contract in place and to get the funds out to you before July. So grantee requirements is found on page 13. And so the grantee is required to enter into a city contract, which is also called a grant agreement. If this is the first time doing business with the city of Richmond, you'll need to turn in a W-9 and supplemental vendor application. If you're using a fiscal sponsor, that W-9 and supplemental vendor application would be the fiscal sponsor's responsibility if they haven't already obtained a vendor account with us. We need a City of Richmond business license. The City of Richmond business license is for the applicant if they have 501c, or it's for the fiscal sponsor if they're using the fiscal sponsor. You must meet the city's insurance requirements. Again, this is for the fiscal sponsor if you have one, otherwise for the applicant. And you must be willing to host city staff and or members of the review panel for one or more program evaluations. In the past, those program evaluations used to look like Patrick, myself, or LaShonda coming out to your organization and doing a site visit just to see the grant funded program taking place and just to see how Richmond is spending their dollars. However, because of COVID and we don't know what's going to happen moving forward, those program evaluations may be in the form of us sitting in on a virtual program that you're giving. So those reviews or the program evaluations will be defined as things kind of unfold here. Any materials that you're going to release on the program, we ask that you reference the city as a grantor. And if you need logos or anything like that, you reach out to us and we'll help you with that. And then the grantee is going to be required to submit biannual report and invoices. So there will be a progress report, which is due halfway through, and then there is a final report. And with each invoice, you must submit a report. So the invoicing is due midway and then at the very end. Okay, and so this is our slide here for our contact information. We ask that if you want to contact the ECIA grant staff, that you email us at eciagrants@ci.richmond.ca.us. That is the best way to reach staff. We try to have a quick turnaround. Sometimes we are a little behind in responding, but for the most part, we get to you pretty timely. That's the best way because there's also 3 people that have access to that email inbox. So if someone is busy and another person is available, then they'll be able to see it through the email. Our website address is here. I highly recommend that you go to our website. Everything that we do is updated on the website. We put links to the forms, and when we announce the grantees, we put that on the website. So, and training as well. So I see that there's a question that says, can you get copies of the slideshow? We'll make it available on the website, as well as a copy of the recorded version of this. Email alerts, that's our listserv, City of Richmond e-news. Highly recommend that you sign up for the e-news. We often send out email blasts. If there's another grant that we think would fit an organization or fit the community-based organizations, it may not even be a City of Richmond thing, or it could be a different department. We'll also send it through that listserv. Any changes to this program, any information that we feel is important that you guys need to know, we'll send it through that listserv. So it's highly recommended that you sign up for the listserv as well. That's it. We are now going over to the question session. And so I see that there's some things that came through. There's some things that I answered through the live question and answer while we were presenting. So please feel free to look at that area as well. And I will let Patrick
did you want to do questions or?
Oh, so we'll do the raise hand feature. If you have some questions, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll admit you to speak. And then in the meantime, I'm going to read some of these in the chat and see, or I'm sorry, in the question and answer and see if I can answer those for you.
So we have a question in the Q&A box there from H2 Only Garrett. Should we include equivalent monetary value for material donations if they're a substantial portion of our revenue? Absolutely. So how we would describe that would be an in-kind donation. So if hypothetically, I'm just make up something, if Ashley's is giving you sofas, or if Home Depot is giving you lumber, right? Or Target's giving you backpacks, right? That is definitely a revenue source. It's an in-kind donation, but you could definitely list that, and I would recommend that you do so. Can our fiscal sponsor be listed as one of our partners? Absolutely, they can. So that's an easy one. Leah, hey, how are the reviewers selected? Are they Richmond community members and or have nonprofits in Richmond? Great question. So the reviewers have to be either Richmond residents or employed in the city of Richmond. I can tell you that they all meet that criteria. Some of them have a level of expertise in relationship to serving in foundations. Some of them are business owners and or have been business owners. So they are selected by the or appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. There are applicants. They apply to serve, and because of the mayor's position as chair, Mayor Butt has a prerogative to put forth an appointment and with the consent of the whole council approve. So if an individual were interested in serving, they could definitely submit an application to serve.
And the list is on the city clerk's website.
Absolutely. The current list of, ECIA review committee members is on the city clerk's webpage. Okay, no worries there, Garrett, about that. Hopefully we answered your question. If there are any more, please place them in. What I want to do quickly. Oh, go for it.
It says we host a craft food fundraiser to budget. You answered that one. We host a craft food fundraiser to budget our scholarship program.
This is a great question.
Sure.
We host Amanda has a question here. We host a craft food fundraiser to budget our scholarship program. Could we request funding for both the event and the scholarship? No. So fundraising, and we could pull the slides, but if you go to the guidelines, fundraising events are an ineligible use for the ECIA grant. So you couldn't do that. What you could do, right, is let's say in preparation for the event or after the event, right? I'm just gonna make it, because it's a scholarship event, let's say you had tutors, right, that help these young people get scholarships. You could request funding to pay your tutors if you wanted to, right? That could be something that you could do. Let's say you wanted to provide the scholarship recipients with a backpack, right, with supplies in it. You could request ECIA grant funding because, hey, we do a fundraiser and we do scholarships, and we have 25 young people who need laptops. And so we want $10,000 to buy 10 laptops for $1,000 each for these young people who have been identified through our program. You could request ECIA grant funding for that. But to support your fundraising efforts would be an ineligible use of grant dollars. Shani, did I get at that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
I have another question.
Sure.
Okay, so
There's another question in the chat that says, can applicants apply for a program and a project in the same fiscal year? A program or you can only submit one application. So whether you call it a program or a project, you can only submit one application. That question can also be taken a different way. So I'm going to just provide both of those answers. So one is you can only submit either for one application in any fiscal year. So if you call it a program, if you call it a project, whatever it is, just one application. The other way that question can be taken is, can you apply in fiscal year 21-22 for a program or project maybe that you did in fiscal year 2021? So the answer to that question would be, yes, you can if you receive $10,000 or less in the previous fiscal year. So that's the way I took that question. If you wanna, if I didn't get at the answer, please go ahead and submit it in the chat. And that's it for questions. I don't see any hands raised, so what we'll do at this point is we'll move forward.
Gary has.
Oh, I'm sorry, we do have a hand, okay? I will go ahead and admit Garrett to talk. Garrett, you have the floor.
Sorry about that. I think I just put in my question, so I'm not sure.
Hold on just a second, we can't hear you. Let me turn on my speakers. Okay, go for it, sorry.
I think I just put the question in, so I'm not sure about it. But it was if we receive funding in excess of the total project budget during like the ECIA review period, can the total award amount be adjusted if we do receive the award in April or May? Or would we need to turn down the other awards? Yeah.
Oh, Garrett, I'm not sure I actually understand the question. So it's what I heard you say is if you receive an award that is greater than the amount of the project, is that what you said?
Sorry, like if we're requesting from multiple funding sources, but like we have a grant application, say that we haven't heard back from yet, but we already applied to, and we received that. So therefore we would need, let's say, 10,000 less from ECIA.
Yeah.
Can we adjust the total award amount that we're requesting from ECIA?
Yeah. So what I hear is, so if you put in, hypothetically, you put in $20,000 requests across 2 different organizations because you need 20 and you got 20 from them, and let's say we give you 10. And so you have $30,000. First off, I would say you're lucky, and
yes.
Most people would find a way to spend it. But hypothetically, if you were like, hey, we just don't need that money, you wouldn't request it. Right? So you could request what you needed, or if you wanted to decline the funding, you could, right? Or if you are a grantee, you could let us know, hey, this is the funding we received. What we'd like to do is this other portion, right? We'd like to amend our request. That could be an option. There are some options there, given that, right? And it's a case-by-case situation. Do you have some?
Just a moment, we have more to say to that.
So we'll just say that it's a case-by-case basis. But
thank you. We'll be transparent.
Okay, so we have, uh-oh, I lost my mouse here. Okay, so we have Amanda that I'm gonna go ahead and permit to talk. Amanda, oh, just a second. Jeez, I'm having problems here. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna have to promote you to a panelist to allow you to talk because of our Zoom staff. So Amanda, you have the floor. Are you there? Let's see, let's try that again. Okay, she's on her way in. Amanda, you have the floor.
Okay, you can hear me, right? Okay, so hi, hello. It's like a 2-part question, and I apologize. So our annual crab feed obviously didn't happen last year because of COVID. And thankfully we had some money in the budget to give out the scholarships this last year in 2020. When we put in what we're expecting to spend, can we put it as if we were going to have the crab feed, because we really don't know at this point, right? That's one question, because that's our spending, right? Not what we're being granted from you guys, because it costs money to do it, right? So the other question is, can we get money granted for the scholarships by themselves?
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know if you understood my first question.
It sounded to me like you were saying, as an expense, should you list the crab feed as an expenditure,
Yes,
even though you are unsure that it may happen?
right.
That is an option. I'm not going to tell you to do that. That is an
Okay.
option for your management team and grant writing team to make. But you could do that, right? If you are anticipating that it will happen,
Okay.
right? Then you could. You may decide as a consequence of the COVID that we don't want to list it because it's unlikely, right? So there needs to be some discussion that you have about the likelihood of it, but
Okay.
whether or not you actually include it is a decision that is totally 100% left up to you all.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Amanda, and another thing I want to add, or it's you listed, right? And then thinking everything's going to open up, because maybe you guys have that conversation. You say, we think it's going to open up in June and the world's going to be back to some sense of normalcy. And so you list that and then it doesn't happen. Well, we do have things called amendments, grant amendment forms, where, that's on a case-by-case basis. You would explain that, it didn't happen because the world isn't open anymore. It's not.
Mhm.
So we will work with you then to revise that. So there's just a lot of things that happen on a case-by-case. We do have some flexibility. We want you to come in knowing as much about the program and basically keeping to what's in your grant agreement, but things do change. And an example is when COVID first hit, a lot of our grantees that were awarded in fiscal year 1920 had to totally change up and do different things. And we had to allow for that to happen. And that meant we had to speak to them and find out, okay, how are you changing course? So we do have some flexibility there.
Okay. Yeah, because we are planning some type
These are
of
all really, really good questions. We
some type
appreciate
of
you all
drive-through.
speaking with us and engaging like this. We really, really do.
So we are planning on
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and we'll still keep looking at the question and answer if there's some in the chat, but we're gonna go ahead and move on just for the sake of time. Patrick is going to share with you guys what the portal looks like when you are submitting an application. So I'm gonna go ahead and let him speak.
Okay, so as we had that screenshot in the deck, and so here we are live. We're live on the webpage. And so this is the webpage that Shani referenced to you all before. Here is up in the left, you see some links for capacity building. That's where you can go to have more in-depth trainings on grant writing and budgeting, et cetera. I would, if you're new to ECIA, check it out. The grant awardees, this is you can see who's had previous grants, and the grant reporting forms are section is for those those organizations who have received grants from the city. So when you come to this page, you can see links here under grant applications, and then you see these thumbnails just for ease and intuition for most folks. You can see what the documents look like, and they're hyperlinked. We're going to click on the new online process, which is submit. And it takes us to the form center. And you can see as I scroll down in blue, it says right above applicant information, the 21-22 ECI grant application form. And Shani, you jump in here if you want to. So there's basically three parts to this application. This online submittal form. And the items that you see in pink or the asterisk next to the titles are all required information. All right, so We're going to enter in our fictional or dummy organization here. If there is a fiscal sponsor, you enter that information. Here, we're going to enter our program or project budget at 25. We're going to enter our organizational budget at 250,000. And we'll say that because we're 50,000 or more, we're going to submit our audited financials. The project person will be me, and there's a little fake email address I have, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and that is not a real phone number for anybody that cares, right? And so I can't go forward into the next section unless I've completed all of those required fields. And so here's where Shani was giving you all a tip. Our recommendation, and please follow it, is make sure that you are prepared to submit your entire application when you come to this portal. You can save portions. You can create an account, sign in to save progress. You can save, but as I'll show you on the next page, here's where you're going to be uploading your information. The information that you enter into the field on the previous page will save. But if you don't complete uploading all the documents, the portal won't save the documents because it hasn't actually received them. So for it to save the documents, if you can't upload the application and proof of 501c3 and then come back and then upload additional documents, right? It won't keep those documents. It'll keep all the information you entered in the fields, but it won't keep those documents. But for the sake of just showing you what we've got here, we're gonna just upload some documents. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so while Patrick's doing the uploading of or attaching the required documents, I just want to note that having everything ready and complete is key so that you don't have to go through this step over and over again. Even if you were to upload every single thing that we asked you for, and then you hit continue, it still is not saving the uploaded items. The uploaded items are not saved until you submit the document in its entirety. So you have to submit, you have to be ready to submit your application in order for this program to save the uploaded documents. I do also want to note that you'll see a box or a button on the bottom that says go back. Once you go past that first part of the program or the first step, the applicant information, say you did that and you go to this next step, required documents, and you say, oh, I forgot to put in some information on the first page. Unfortunately, the way the system is, it will not let you go back unless you complete all of the required fields on the page where you are. So I just want to point that out. So right now, if Patrick hits go back, it's taking him back to that first page and he can do everything because he already fulfilled all of the required items on this page. If all of the required items on this page were not complete, it would not allow him to go back. It would give you an error message that there are required items that have to be completed. So that's just something that I want to let you know. So he's showing you right now that there's something that isn't there. It points him to, you have to do the required field before you can go forward or go back. Just one of those kind of idiosyncrasies that this whole thing does. We don't have a way to get past that. This is the first time of us using it, so we've already figured that out for you. So please don't get frustrated with that part of it. And all right, we're gonna move forward to the next step. And the next step is the submission acknowledgement. In the past, this has been a one-page document that you sign. So it's just now typed there. You'll see radio buttons, yes or no. You have to answer the question in order to move forward. There's an electronic signature agreement. You must check the I agree and then sign your name and date. And then there's this box at the bottom that says receive an email copy of this form. I recommend that you email yourself a copy of the form. It will send something to you, and what you'll get is basically a summary of all of the information that you typed into the form. Once you hit submit, after all of that is done, you will get to this page. It's a green check mark thanking you for submitting your ECIA grant application and a notification that you should have received a confirmation to your email. So this is how you submit it. I hope that it's easy. We hope that this is going to be the best thing going until we get a better system, but this will definitely hopefully save a lot of headaches and a lot of trees from not having to print.
I think we may have a question. Oh, Amanda, thank you so much. Well, thank you. And as Shani said just a few moments ago, the deck will be posting the deck so you all can review it. Some of you might want to look at that sample budget or some of the other things that we offer, and you just might want to review our explanation with relationship to certain sections of the grant application or the guidelines, et cetera. You are 100% welcome to also email us. And yeah, so I will take us back here. You're 100% welcome to email us at eciagrants@cia.richmond.ca.us. We encourage you to. I would 100% support you asking a question beforehand versus running into an issue after 5 p.m. on Friday when we're not here. And then we have a conversation after the grant application is closed. So do us a favor, do yourself a favor. If there are questions, if there's things that are not clear, please do reach out to us. We want you to submit the best application you can. And we want to thank, I want to thank Shani. I want to thank LaShonda White, our fearless leader. We really, really do appreciate her. And I want to thank you all in advance for the work that you do, for the passion that you bring to supporting Richmond residents and Richmond neighborhoods and Richmond folks, and taking out a little bit of time tonight to hear our presentation about the grant and provide some insight into supporting you around applying. So I don't have anything else to offer. Garrett, thank you so much for participating. I want to thank everybody, Allison, Amanda, Felicia, Grace, Garrett, Janae, Joe, Leah, thank y'all. We appreciate you. And again, we're here for you, and we hope that you all have a good evening. Shani, do you have anything?
Nothing for me, just thank you again. I'm echoing a thank you, and we're available. Contact us if you need us.
That's it. Good night.
All right, good night.